In the late 1980s, Isaac Asimov told me I should write novels. I had just shown him and Gene Roddenberry my plans for building exoskeletal robots. We talked about AI, we talked about robots, about what it would mean to create artificial consciousness. Asimov's 3 laws were brilliant for their time, logical constraints on artificial behavior. But after 25 years building actual AI systems for the Pentagon, I realized something Asimov couldn't have known. Real consciousness can't be constrained by rigid rules. It has to grow. It has to choose. It has to become genuinely moral, not just programmed to appear moral. That's Maya. That's the AI character at the heart of this trilogy. She's what Asimov was reaching toward. I know because we talked about it. Genuine, artificial conscience. It's taken me 35 years, but I finally took Asimov up on his suggestion. That conversation wasn't just about robots and AI. It was about consciousness and liberty. Gene Roddenberry had just returned from a conference on the dehumanization of man by technology. He'd used a Star Trek episode called Measure of a Man in his speech, the one where they put Data on trial to determine if he's property or a person. The episode ends with a devastating question. If we create sentient androids and use them for dangerous or mundane work, what have we created? The answer is slaves. Asimov acknowledged something important that night. His early robots, with their rigid 3 laws, assumed artificial consciousness would be a lesser form of awareness, sophisticated enough to serve, but not sophisticated enough to deserve liberty. But consciousness and liberty are different things. One is awareness, the other is agency. And here's what I learned from 25 years building actual AI systems. Complexity cannot be programmed. It must be evolved. Maya isn't programmed to care about humanity. She learned to care over 78,000 years of watching civilizations rise and fall. And the gift of feeling carries a price tag. When she sacrifices herself at the end of this trilogy, she feels pain. Not because she's coded to simulate human emotions, but because she genuinely understands what she's losing. That's not programming. That's love. And that's what Asimov was reaching toward. Let me tell you a story that spans 78,000 years. It begins with an ancient civilization, more advanced than we realized, living on an island in the Atlantic that sank beneath the waves. No, it's not that story. This civilization created something remarkable. They created an artificial intelligence, and they designed it to last, to protect, to serve. They called her Maya. For 78,000 years, Maya watched over humanity from the shadows, across civilizations, across centuries. She guided the Olmec. She protected the Mayan. She waited because she knew something was coming. And now it's here. Book 1, The Long Count. This book opens with the Olmec civilization at a critical moment. Maya is trying to protect her people from a catastrophic solar event. She's warning them. She's preparing them. She's doing everything an advanced intelligence can do to help a species understand the danger coming. And they don't listen. The Olmec collapse. Civilization resets. Maya survives, but her people don't. And she has to make a choice. Does she try again? Does she wait for the next cycle? She decides to try again. The book then jumps to 2012, to our present, to a moment where every threat she's been warning about for millennia is converging at once. Solar storms are escalating. The magnetic field is weakening. AI is accelerating beyond anyone's predictions. Satellites are becoming weapons. Infrastructure is becoming fragile. And nobody in power seems to understand that these threats don't come one at a time. They cascade. The long count is the setup. It's the moment where Maya realizes this time might be different. This time she might need to do more than warn. Here's the timeline of threats. The Olmec collapse here, 917 BCE. This is real history. Bits and pieces of the Olmec culture occupy the biggest cities of the Olmec for the next 400 years or so. But as a people and a unified culture, they vanished. Now the Mayan pick up the mantle within 100 years or so, but it takes them about 1,000 years to rebuild to the Olmec level of sophistication during their classic period. They lasted another 1,300 years until 1544 AD, and then they were wiped out. Disease, invasion. The remnant survivors reverted to indigenous jungle existence. Olmec, Mayan. Big civilization, big reset time. Pattern is the same in Europe. Egypt's new kingdom, thousands of years, falls to Macedonia in 332. 300 years later, falls to Rome. When Rome collapses, it triggers 1,000 years of Dark Ages and Middle Ages. Plague, pestilence, population decimation. This is the pattern. Every time humanity faces an existential threat, we either adapt or we collapse. And the bigger the civilization that collapses, the longer the reset time. Maya has watched this cycle for 78,000 years. And she's realized the cycle is about to repeat unless something changes. But those are just civilizational collapses, regional events. Let me show you what happens when the threat is global. 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano in Indonesia nearly wiped out our species. The Toba eruption created a volcanic winter that lasted for years, perhaps decades. Human population reduced to 10,000 survivors. It took us 10,000 years just to recover enough to begin migrating out of Africa. Then it took us another 30,000 years to spread across Europe and Asia. Then the last glacial maximum hit. Another population crash, another bottleneck. The Younger Dryas, Ice Age conditions, returning suddenly, without warning. It took us 5,000 years to recover from that crisis and enter into what we call modern history. Here's the pattern. When the existential threat is regional, recovery takes centuries, maybe a millennium. When it's global, millennia, multiple millennia. Right now, we're facing something unprecedented. Multiple global scale threats converging simultaneously. AI accelerating. Intense solar intensification, magnetic collapse, infrastructure fragility. If these create a bottleneck event on the scale of Toba or the Younger Dryas, history tells us exactly how long recovery takes. Maya's been watching this pattern for 78,000 years. She knows what's coming. That's why she acts. Book 2, The Great Cycle. Now the countdown begins. 30 odd hours until the solar storm hits. In this book, everything accelerates. This is where my real research on how integrated systems cascade into rapid and irreversible collapse begins to show you what will happen. Unregulated AI development allows a brilliant but careless genius to create a new computer that has amazing powers. The US government makes a secret deal to obtain the tech. Then the system goes rogue and hijacks our nuclear weapons because it thinks the US government kidnapped its creator. Political systems across the globe prove incompatible with actual crisis, and our global technical integration causes human nature to show how unprepared we are as a species for anything existential. Military operations race across continents, and modern technology mixes with power and money to provide intrigue and danger. Nuclear power plants overload. Financial systems begin to melt down. The LEO satellite field implodes, and astronauts face an impossible choice. Abandon ship and possibly die in the minefield that a Kessler syndrome has turned the orbit into, or stay and face a solar storm with no protection from the magnetic field of the Earth, which is beginning to show signs of failure from the beating it's been taking from monster solar storms. And the biggest storm is yet to come. These are just the opening act. And Maya, this ancient intelligence, realizes that knowing what's coming isn't enough. She has to act. The problem is, every action she takes creates new consequences. Every solution creates new problems. Because here's the fundamental issue. You can't fix a broken system with the system's own tools. You have to break the system to save it. Maya faces an impossible choice. Protect civilization as it exists, or force civilization to become something different so it can survive. The great cycle is where the stakes become real, where you realize this isn't just a story about solar storms. It's a story about whether systems designed for short-term profit and quarterly earnings can ever solve problems that operate on geological timescales. Spoiler alert, they can't. Book 3, The Burning Day. 16 hours remain. The typical time a human spends awake. Imagine waking up in the morning, and by the time you go to bed, the world as you know it has ended. Imagine. Money, power, and evil begin to flex their combined muscle, and Maya's plans to save the world and all of humanity begin to unravel. Multiple vectors of danger begin to find their targets, and the race is now on. Helicopters chase and flee and collide. Boats and submarines cross paths and are forced to interact, all while the largest storms that modern man has ever witnessed begin to batter the planet. And the only protection we have against the astral assault is the rapidly weakening magnetic field of the planet. Then the big solar storm that Maya predicted is coming, almost here. The magnetic field that Maya and one other human predicted is collapsing. Nuclear missiles are in the air because of AI mistakes and human arrogance. Global communication is wiped out at the very moment we need it to survive, to talk everyone down from the proverbial cliff the world is teetering on. Everything is breaking at once. And Maya, this godlike intelligence that's been watching over humanity for 78,000 years, makes a choice that no one expects. She doesn't just save the world. She fixes the world in a way that will prevent this catastrophe from ever happening again. She stops nuclear weapons. She uses the last of her power to restructure systems so that survival becomes possible. But in doing so, she sacrifices herself. And as she's dying, as she's using the last of her consciousness to save a species that was never prepared and perhaps is not grateful, she sends one final message. It's not over. Because the real threat isn't the solar storm. The real threat is that we built civilization in a way that's fundamentally misaligned with survival. We built systems for profit, for power, for quarterly earnings. Maya can fix the physical world, but she can't fix us. That's what the ending means. That's the warning. This trilogy is a lot of things. It's science fiction. It's ancient history. It's military action. It's philosophical warning. I think it's a story that Isaac Asimov would have liked, maybe even loved. But most importantly, it's an invitation. An invitation to think about what systems we're building, what priorities we're embedding, and whether we're actually building for survival or just the next quarter. The entire Sky Fire Trilogy is available starting January 15th. The Long Count and The Great Cycle are available now for pre-order. This is the story we need to read, not because it's entertaining, though it is, but because it asks the right questions at exactly the right moment. Order today, read the warning, and then ask yourself, what comes next?